Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Shuck.
Co-host Rich Gear here with you as well, and Doug's got a very interesting topic. We're dealing with the subject of a very significant important figure named Samuel Wilberforce, who is the son of William Wilberforce. I don't know, maybe people remember there's a movie that came out a few years ago called Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace.
Yes.
That was about William Wilberforce was the man who stopped the slave trade in Darwin. And Samuel was his third son, and he was born in 1805 and died in 1873.
So why are we talking about Wilberforce? Why is he important, Doug?
He's very important because he was the Bishop of Winchester in 1870 to 1873, and after Darwin's book came out in 1859, he reviewed this book in 1860.
Right.
And I actually have a copy of that review here, and it was taken from the Victorian Web, which is online. And it was in 1860 that he did this review. And then he had a famous debate with Thomas Huxley shortly afterward.
You know, the thing about that debate, and over the years you hear, well, Thomas waxed into the debate, but the people that were there, the reports of them,
Right.
It's like the old Porgy and Bess song. It ain't necessarily so. I mean, some of his arguments, especially reading his article, going over some of the facts, he really, some of the stuff we talk about today, he points out 100 years ago.
Right.
And there's still
the whole issue isn't new. It's,
yeah.
The things that Samuel Wilberforce brought up were definitely the things that we still bring up today. There's something that we really don't have any reason why those arguments are invalid. You know, there's
no. You think with all the new discoveries, and there have been lots of them that actually give more credence to I think creation viewpoints, but the main arguments are still very powerful. The thing when I was amazed when I started reading this article, I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing through, and even this show, Doug, you said you were going to go through about half of his review. You might want to read it online. But it's how gracious he was to Darwin.
Yeah,
he was pretty nice. I mean, I go, wow, he's taking this kind of as a friendly thing here, you know.
But then he said, "Well, we shall have much and grave fault to find."
Yeah, I know that was right. Yeah, it was like the other shoe was going to drop, and so anyway, so he praised Darwin. But he said we're going to find much fault. And what are some of the things he comes up with?
Well, one of the things that he saw Darwin doing was that he focused on the interdependence of nature and things like symbiosis, like aphids yielding secretion to ants. And so he saw this cooperation, and he thought, well, you know, this was. He sort of came to the wrong conclusion about all this because he thought that because everything seemed so integrated that he believed that they all came from each other, and it's sort of like a false conclusion, a false cause fallacy.
Ants are an interesting thing. I have my sister-in-law, she's got these giant peony bushes, and the peonies won't blossom unless the ants are crawling on to open up the blossom. There's a lot of things with ants that are kind of fun like that.
And so it's something that's interesting that Darwin spent a lot of time talking about these things, and yet they are actually refuting his theory without him knowing it. And that's what's really interesting about it, is how the deception sort of caught on, and they missed all the points of what the whole thing was about.
I think Peter puts it pretty clear when he says, but this they are willingly ignorant or willfully ignorant. And I think the real problem comes in is not that even Thomas Huxley admitted as much when he made, I'm paraphrasing, but basically it's not that creation couldn't be just as valid as evolution, but it's just that his point, he said we want to sexually do what we want to do. Okay, I'm not saying that was all what Darwin was about, but a lot of times it's about they don't want to be beholden to any creator, anybody that sets the rules outside of themselves. But that's a philosophical thing. But the arguments that Wilberforce comes up are quite rooted in science and observation, I think. You know,
Darwin spent a lot of time on this ant. It's called the Formica rufescens. and it's a slave-making ant. And there's some these light-colored ants that take these black ants and make slaves of them, and the slaves do their bidding.
Oh my
and we'll
God.
have a little bit more to say about that later, because he actually takes that to a conclusion that none of us would find very useful this year.
Well, who did that do that? Who did
Darwin actually used that to show just slavery. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Bergman over the years has talked about how racist evolutionary thinking is, or has been. They try to distance himself from it, but their roots are very, very clearly bad. So anyway, so what is it? You got a general comment on?
Well, Wilberforce wrote this comment about the whole book. He says, "Now all of this we think is really charming writing. We feel as if we walk abroad with Darwin very much as a favored object of the attention of the dervish." That's sort of like a mystic,
Yeah.
who must have felt when he had he rubbed the ointment around his eyes and had it opened to see all the jewels and diamonds and emeralds and topazes and rubies, which were sparkling unregarded beneath the earth, hidden as yet from all other eyes, save those which the dervish had enlightened. So it was Darwin here was enlightening everybody else.
Oh, I see what your point. Okay.
With his revelations, and here he's coming up with this brand new theory, which has never been talked about before, and now we think that this is something that we need to start adopting.
Darwin really, of course, the thing about Darwin, we've talked about who was the guy? I always forget. You got the guy who was coming up with the same theory that actually wrote to him. He had a vision and a trance, but even his grandfather was dealing the great chain of being. All these things were leading up to Darwin. What Darwin did, though, was steeped it in observation, and it gave it what we would call today street cred.
Right.
But Wilberforce takes apart. Like you said, you can make observations, but you can come to wrong conclusions based on the observations.
Yeah.
But it seemed to be, some of the stuff he made was very, very good observations.
Right.
They were very methodical.
There's a whole bunch of his book devoted simply to pigeon breeding.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this detail that he threw in there, which came from his scientific observations, sort of served to make this credible to a lot of scientists, but they missed the obvious problems that Wilberforce is bringing about.
Yeah.
And Wilberforce pointed out that this is Darwin's analogy. This is ultimately where he was going with it. And I don't think people caught on about this. It is that all the various forms of vegetable and animal life, which the globe is peopled, and fossils, have come down by natural succession from descent from father to son.
Yeah.
So he thinks, he points out that this is what Darwin was actually aiming at, was showing that there was a common ancestor, a common prototype. And he says, then Darwin's analogy says, analogy would lead me to be one step further, namely to the belief that all animals and plants have descended from one prototype. So Darwin is saying, well, here's this piece of slime or whatever it was that became all
those
those
things. Those things in the water, they used to call them,
Yeah.
had a name for them, they called it back.
Amoebas or
They weren't even amoebas, or some like precursor to life that had turned into life. I can't remember what they used to call it in the primordial seas, but
the primordial soup, yeah.
Yeah, and so.
And this is also a quote from Darwin. He says, "There was one primordial form into which life was first breathed by the Creator."
Now that was before Darwin really. That was was that in the Origin of Species?
Yes.
Because yes, I remember reading that. Because the descent of man, he made no pretenses of even having the initial one.
Right. Yeah.
By the Creator. It was basically he was I believe a fervent believer in spontaneous generation, because you have to be. You have to have an uncaused first cause. How did a rock turn into something alive, or whatever, even a progenitor or something was alive. How would it happen? This book, in the Origin of Species, he still had a creator. Because he didn't want, he knew where it's, because look, the biblical record is absolutely not that way.
Right.
There were certain distinct kinds made. We've talked about this on the show many, many times. From those individual distinct kinds, many variations could come up. Right. This is, by the way, what Darwin brought in that was very good. He would observe the variations, and they were valid. They were very good. But then he would make a conclusion, right, which we have now shown in modern times to be totally fallacious.
Well, it's the fallacy of the hasty conclusion.
Fallacy of the hasty conclusion? Yeah. I've done it myself, but I'm saying the idea, we talked about this many times, the ability, and Wilberforce would not have known this, but we in modern times this is some new information which has come out, realizing that variation within a fixed limit is much different processes than something turning into something brand new.
Right, yeah.
It's a fundamentally different process. One has to increase something at the genomic level. The other is just switching it around or deleting stuff that's there. Yeah. And it's a much different. They couldn't have known this. I mean, look, Jerry Bergman's going to say, they used to think that basically a cell was not like a little glob of jelly. It was not very complicated. And by the time Wilberforce, when he was writing, would have known some of those things. That's why I was really impressed with that article part that I read, how much he still got right. Knowing not really that much. It was much easier to say, well, this could morph into this, into this, into this. And
I like the way that Wilberforce skewers Darwin with this.
The fungi? No fungus among us? Let's go.
It says, if Mr. Darwin can, with the same correctness of reasoning, demonstrate to us our fungular descent, we shall dismiss our pride and avow with a characteristic humility of philosophy our unsuspected cousinship with the mushrooms.
The mushrooms.
And then he says, claim kindred there and have our claim allowed.
Yeah. But I mean, the point of it is the arguments that he gets to. I mean, these are fun little witticisms, but
and there's actually four main propositions that Darwin throws out there.
This is what Wilberforce is addressing.
Wilberforce is pointing these out. He says, observed and omitted variations spring up in the course of descents from a common progenitor. And that's number one. Many of these variations tend to an improvement of the parent stock. And that's debatable, and it doesn't happen. Actually. It doesn't happen,
yeah.
And by a continued selection of these improved specimens as the progenitors of future stock, its powers may be ultimately increased. So he believed that there was a grand future that he's going to take. And then finally, the final proposition, and this is probably where you see the dark spiritual side of this.
Okay.
There is in nature a power continually and universally working out the selection, and so fixing and augmenting these improvements. And so he's appealing to some sort of higher power of
some cosmic reality, but not. Although in origin he still appeals to a creator, but his creator is not. That word is not the creator of the Bible. I'll tell you that. Yeah. Okay.
And then Wilberforce points out that Darwin's whole theory rests on the truth of these propositions and crumbles utterly away if only one of them fail.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of the things Wilberforce went in and pointed out that Darwin refutes himself continually in his book. And for example, a condor will only lay a couple of eggs, but the ostrich might lay a dozen. And
or 20. Or score, yeah. Score is 20, yeah.
And but in the countries where they live, the condors may outnumber ostriches. So you have to figure out, well, how does that work? There's sort of a balance that God put into the whole creation that came out. And Darwin points out that this is a problem for him.
I like the next point. This thing: domestication breeds many varieties, yet it reverts to the wild if it's left to themselves. Right. This is the rock pigeon thing we found out. They would get if they were allowed to just be on themselves, they go into the original
Exactly, yeah.
kind that they were. I remember reading about that. I said, I did not know that. That's kind of a thing they don't really tell you about, you know.
And Darwin really didn't establish the last two propositions, you know. The question is, well, where is the improvement of the stock?
Right. Yep.
And then what is this power of nature that works out the selection?
Well, now in modern times they say it's mutation working on natural selection.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
Darwin, and they were talking about mutations, but they never found any mutations that did any improvement.
Did they really know about mutations in Darwin's day? I don't think they knew about that.
Well, it was mentioned in here.
Was it? Wilberforce, that's 1873. Yeah, because he died in what, 1879? Huh, interesting. Yeah, Darwin did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Wilberforce actually passed away first.
Yeah, right.
Okay, all right. So what about...
And here's the argument that Darwin made about dogs and horses. And, well, actually, Wilberforce talked about this. He says, variations has the essential characteristics of monstrosity about them. You know, you get like the different wings on different flies, you know, that it gets all stunted, you know.
Oh yeah, that's what they do.
And not one of them has a character which Darwin reminds us is the only one which nature can select. And so, even if you selected it, it has a tendency to go back, you know, revert itself.
Well, yeah, and we know a lot. Most mutations are at best slightly neutral, but mostly they're slightly harmful. Some of them are very harmful, and nature, if you want to talk about natural selection, weeds all the stuff out. But where's the improvement in the stock? That argument still is a bugaboo for these guys because it doesn't really work that way.
And Wilberforce points out that, like in dogs, every variation introduced by man in dogs is to man's advantage, but not to the advantage of the animal. For example, bulldogs, you get a lot of strength, but you lose it in their swiftness.
Yeah.
But then you have greyhounds, which are swift, but they're not that strong of a dog. So you have, and he also pointed out that English racehorse would lose much of what would enable it to be in a battle of life to compete with its wild ancestors.
Oh yeah, right. Those wild Mustangs we used to have out here in the States, yeah.
Then Darwin comes up with a bunch of excuses why there's all these gaps in the fossil record.
Oh yeah, we've addressed that many times. But go over it, Doug. People have not seen it.
Here's what he said. Well, only a small portion of the globe has been explored with care. You know.
Not today.
And then he extends at will to new and hitherto unsuggested myriads of years, the times which have elapsed between successive formations, in order to account for the utter absence of everything like a succession of discernible variations in the successive inhabitants of the earth. So you have missing time period, missing fossils that he's looking for. And
of course, we as creationists say it's because those time periods never existed.
Right.
It's why we talk so much about young Earth, because we think the evidence is for a young Earth. But there's they have to point to much deep time to have all these but there's really we don't have enough skeletons in the Earth. We have no missing links. Everything they kind of point out with a missing link ends up creating 3 more missing links. It's just like I'm being a little glib here, but I mean the point of it is the same problem that Darwin had in his day is the same problem we have today, and that's despite the fact that the portion of the Earth has been explored quite extensively today. We still find none of these great succession, the great chain of being, the great, all this should be out. And
you need a continuous gradation between the different fossils you find in the fossil.
It doesn't really exist any place in the Earth. We've talked about that in our geology sessions when all these great uniformitarian geologic thing, it pretty much doesn't even exist in the Earth.
And Darwin admits it in his book. He finds no records in the crust of the Earth to verify his assumption. And so the only reason that he proposes it is he needs it.
Yeah, I know. Yep, that's a theory in search of some evidence.
And Darwin himself wrote about the difficulties with his own theory. He says you can't explain the electric organs in fishes. And then their special organs for secreting venom and discharging it at its own proper volition. He probably didn't know about the bombardier beetle.
Oh, that would drive him crazy. Yeah, the bombardier beetle, one of our favorite creationist bugs. Has two chemicals in its body. I can't even remember. You would remember the name, but they come outside, they mix together, 275 degrees Fahrenheit. That frog that's trying to eat that bug will not ever do that again.
Right, yeah.
You know, I've seen pictures of that frog with his tongue hanging off with a bombardier beetle, and it actually makes a noise of beep. Yeah, that would just drive him.
And he couldn't explain, why carnivores and grain eaters have totally different stomachs and digestive systems. So if you have a cow and a bear, their whole digestive system is so different. You have the cows that chew their cud and goats and things like that. And so you have 4 different stomachs in the cow, whereas the bear or the carnivores only have the one.
This next new point is very interesting. This is a very valid argument now. No new organ has ever been known to be developed.
Right.
We still have no new organs that have ever been developed. But it gets worse, so that's why over the last 100 years, they've been going into the microbiological level. Mm-hmm. Nothing new there either.
No new natural instinct has been formed. Then he goes into a lot of imaginations, of how a lung might have formed from a swim
bladder turned into a lung, yeah. I mean, he kind of laughed because if there was some metamorphic process that you should see this, but you don't, okay?
He also, Darwin goes into a lot about bats evolving from something like a flying squirrel.
Okay.
And you have the fingers of the bat's wings.
Right, they extend out, yeah.
Extended out, but that's not how a flying squirrel is.
No.
And then this is...
Well, that's why now they have convergent evolution.
Oh, yeah.
You got 4 different wings, and 4 different evolution happened 4 different times to develop wings. Insects, flying reptiles, flying mammals, and birds. And it makes no sense at all.
And then flying fish, of course, is on its way to being...
That's on its way. Yeah. Woo!
Now this is the quote that we creationists like from Darwin's book. It says, "To suppose that the eye, with its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for emitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection, seems, I freely confess, absurd to the highest possible degree."
And it does seem absurd to me, still today.
And then he contents himself by saying, well, I suspect that any sensitive nerve may be rendered sensitive to light, and likewise to the coarser vibration of the air which produces sound. And so he sort of weighs us off like that, I suppose if, nerves can evolve into this,
Yeah. If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed, which could not have possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down, but I can find no such case.
But he hadn't read Darwin's Black Box, apparently.
Yeah, that's exactly, I know.
Now, I talked about the black ant, and
this is going to be good.
And that's a slave, and it says it's an application of lower animals to man himself. He started to allude to this in The Origin of Species.
This is Darwin, okay, yeah.
And he says it's always a black ant that is enslaved by other colored and more fortunate brethren. And he says the slaves are black. He emphasizes this. And the tendency of the lighter colored races to prosecute the Negro slave trade was really a remains of the instinct that had possessed them before they had been improved by natural selection.
Oh my God! I know that just offends you even to think about it, how bad that was. Wow.
Now Wilberforce, I think mistakenly says, well, I think Darwin is trying to write this as a Christian, and he sort of. I think he's mistaken in that.
No, we don't think. We know he was mistaken. His own son, Darwin's own son, said his father was an atheist at the end of his life. He may have had some theological basis, but the death of his daughter, I think really soured him on Christianity, and he just kept going. I think he wrote the things he wrote, Doug, to placate the Christian constituency that was out there that would have found great, and they found it out anyway. They knew where he was going with this anyway.
Well, here's a quote from Wilberforce about this. He talks about this being an attack on the Christian faith, and he says, "Few things have more deeply injured the cause of religion than the busy, fussy energy with which men, narrow and feeble alike in faith and in science, have bustled forth to reconcile all new discoveries in physics with the word of inspiration." So he says, this activity that we have to try to reconcile science and Bible, the whole issue is bigger than that. You can't do it. And it sort of reminds me of what Luther Townsend said in the book I've got at home called The Bible in the 19th Century. He said, we can't fault Scripture for not agreeing with error.
Yeah, I mean, because Doug, Christians, we do that same thing. We rejoice. We find things that seem to work and actually do work, but you can't rest on the science because it changes from day to day, week to week, year to year. Things that were valid 20 years ago are no longer valid, Doug.
Right.
So if you rest on that, it's like people who make them a big thing. Well, look at the Big Bang proves, because there was a beginning. I wouldn't put my marbles on, bet my marbles on the Big Bang theory. And now we found out there's lots of flaws in it. The point of it is that they seem, it seems like it agrees with the Bible. I said, no, the Bible does not really agree with 20 billion or 12 billion year old universe. It does not really agree with that.
So anyway. Finally, Darwin's argument violates the Stern-Bacon law of observation.
Baconian law of observation of facts, yeah.
And it breaks down utterly no natural variations from the specific type favorable to the individual in nature that can be anywhere be found. And geology doesn't reveal any finely gradated organic change.
So it breaks down everywhere.
Yeah. And so, all these different things. Darwin wrote a lot about pigeon breeding, about horses, dogs, sheep, goats, cows, cats, and fowls, and how they were bred domestically, but he doesn't answer the question of why they don't produce permanent change. And so, with that, I think Wilberforce did an excellent job in destroying Darwin's argument.
Yeah, you said really that's only about half of his argument.
Only half of his argument.
Half of it. There's a lot more to it, but he's pretty good. So anyway, Doug, I guess that's about the end of the show, huh?
Yeah, we'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.